Hello and welcome to the Viva La Vulva podcast. I am your host, Dr. Cara Quant, and I am an internal medicine doctor and advocate for female sexual health. Today on the podcast, we have a special guest, and I say that all the time, but I truly mean it. Her name is Shima Star, and I want to thank you, Shima, for being on the podcast today.
Thank you, Cara, for the invitation. I'm excited to have this conversation with you and bring more awareness to the issues around women and women's rights. So this is an absolute pleasure on my part to be asked by you to be here.
Yes. And just a little background, Shima Star is an artist. If you're on the YouTube, you can see some of her art behind her. And we connected through my brother, Jeremy. And I was excited to see her art and it feels very Viva La Vulva-ish. And so I was like, yes, we definitely have to connect. We definitely have to have a conversation about your art, the inspiration behind it, your collections that you've had in the past. So I want to dive into all of that. But first, I just want you to introduce yourself to the Viva La Vulva audience.
Okay, so I am Shima Star. Just a heads up, I adopted the star as my surname to symbolize a rejection of patriarchy and as a form of self-empowerment. So this is my artist name, Shima Star. I'm British born, and I've lived in Washington State for the last 18 years. My parents are East African Indians, and it goes back a generation before we reach Gujarat, India. So I have this, I have this eclectic sort of lineage and experiences that are all sort of pulled into the work that I make. If I feel like I have sort of because of this history, I have a bigger worldview. And I think I contribute to the conversations regarding, women of color in particular. I did go to art school. I went to University of Arts in London. There's so many sort of factors in what has brought me to be the artist today. I wasn't allowed to paint and draw as a child in my home. The only place I could do that was at school. I literally told my mum 2 years ago I failed my GCSEs, which would be the equivalent of SATs on purpose, so that I only had enough to get myself into art school. I refused to do the first generation immigrant thing of becoming a doctor, an accountant, any of that stuff. So I really dug my heels in to be an artist. And then going to art college and being criticized by my faculty head for the way that I use color. I've always worked like this, using this palette. These are the colors that we're introduced to. In the classroom at elementary level, even pre that, these are the colors that we're introduced to as children. So why, as an adult, when you go to art school, that these colors aren't good enough anymore?
Yeah.
Also, reflecting back on color is just so important with the language that I use. Because I am a woman of color, I can never escape from this. Culturally, these colors are rich for us in the East and in Africa and in India. We celebrate in India the Holi festival of color. Springtime is a beautiful thing. The way that we dress, it's vibrant, colorful, sparkly. So all of these elements are drawn into the work. So to be criticized for it, I just dug my heels in and I made even more colorful work. I'm not going to have people continuously say no to me. And when people do say no to me, I double down.
That's what it sounds like. And you know what? I've done that before. There was actually a person in college who told me, I told them that I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to go to medical school. And they saw my grades and they're like, no, you're not going to go. And that was my motivation to be like, no, what are you talking about? I'm definitely going to medical school. And I did it. So, and not because of them, but it just adds fuel to the fire.
100%, yes, the fuel to the fire. Whenever, I had a body of work, if you go back through my portfolio, called the Red Series, where I'm producing work around, I go right back to the first goddess, which is ancient Sumeria. Anya, her name is. And in that series, I also did my version of Lakshmi, which in the Greek goddesses, she's Fortuna. So finding these connections historically, that, all of these stories are connected. There's a root source. And then putting this work out there and being criticized by men from my own culture that I should not be making work like this. And I'm like, whoa, hang on a minute. It's taken so much courage and confidence to be here and to be producing in this minute, to again be hit by, hey, you cannot be doing this. Why can't I do this? I'm an artist. Aren't I living in a free country? Aren't I allowed to have free thought? Am I not allowed to express myself freely? It comes with a whole baggage of criticism when you are not just painting pretty pictures, you know.
Yeah, and I understand that also, that sentiment, because when I had the art exhibit back in 2018, there was a lot of women. I would say I mainly had women or vulva owners who came to the exhibit. There were some men who was, either coupled with the woman or what have you, but they didn't understand as well, and it made them feel very uncomfortable. And I think that that is a good thing, to make people feel a little uncomfortable, because this is a topic that I still feel in 2024 is, it's, there's still a lot of shame around it, around the vulva, around reproductive rights, around, like just the female form or the feminine
And
form.
it feels ridiculous when really I think we're over. There's more women than men in terms of population. To me, it's just, why is there shame around our bodies? It's confusing. I mean, I have a daughter as well, and I ask her, how do you feel about women's rights being rolled back? How do you feel about this as the next upcoming generation? And it's shocking for her. And we kind of just like grew up, I know my generation, we grew up with a certain amount of acceptance. This is how it is. And then slow changes were being made. And you're thinking, well, I think the biggest thing for me was moving out to the US. I sometimes sit here and think, would I be making this work if I was living back in London in the UK? I don't think so, Cara. I think this is a product of the environment. This is a product of raising the next generation and empowering them. Why was it okay for me to have certain rights and the next generation can't have these rights? It's very confusing. And then also just thinking about, as I said, that global perspective, I'm very conscious that there are billions of women that don't have the right to vote. There are billions of women that don't have autonomy over their own bodies. And America is a pivotal structure for these changes. Anything that happens here does impact the rest of the world. So, you can sit here in our little bubbles and think, that vote doesn't matter. It matters. I can't stress that enough.
Yes, yes. So everyone listening, your vote matters. Please get out there on November 5th and vote. Your voice definitely matters. And I actually wanted to come back to the point that you said that you wouldn't be making this body of work if you didn't live in the US. What do you mean by that?
We're in the UK and in London, you have access to abortion clinics, you have access to doctors and gynecologists, and the NHS is there equally for everybody, National Health Service. As far as I'm concerned, even reading recent news, I'm not hearing of women's rights, people trying to roll back women's rights, and religious groups, forming their opinions and imposing their opinions on women. I'm not hearing that at home, but I hear it here in the news. It's literally here daily. And then we've obviously in an exciting moment again with US politics, that we have a woman of color present and in the forefront. I mean, it's exciting for us, but it's also very scary for us. You know, we've got to do our best to protect this woman.
Yeah. Yes, we do.
Because, you know, it takes a tremendous amount of courage for her to step up and step forward.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yes.
that's why. That is why. I mean, I don't have. I just this would not be in. Maybe it's the way that I work. I respond to what's around me. I'm. My friends laugh at me because I can go out of favor very quickly because I'm not very good at keeping my mouth shut. Filter doesn't exist in this world. I'm a South Londoner, born and raised. You know, it's a bit like being a New York woman. You would come out a little feisty. And I, you know, if I feel something is wrong, I will speak up about it, even if it is to my own detriment, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know.
But you know, it actually reminds me of the quote, and I'm gonna butcher this, I know it, but it's like, you know, iconic women of history like didn't get that way by being quiet. You know, like we have to use our voices. We have to, you know, say what is on our mind because that's the way things are going to change. And you know, with the it's so crazy that, you know, I feel like we are going backwards in the US with the overturning of Roe versus Wade and in 2022. And yeah, I mean, I do feel like we are still fighting this fight of autonomy over our own bodies, which is it's again, we're in 2024. So like why are we having these debates about
There were
the
shocking things
autonomy?
around this. Yeah, I mean, I was in London, maybe it was around 3 or 4 years ago, and I saw a poster in the Underground saying that, you know, proudly saying, "Did you know that 50 years ago women were allowed to drive buses?" And I'm like, "What? Why is that? What? That doesn't make sense to me, really." And then I look, you know, towards the Arabian countries, and you know, it's only been maybe 5, 6 years since women have been allowed to drive over there.
Yeah.
And I think women might be better drivers than men. I don't know. That might be
I'm, I'm sure they are. Yes.
controversial.
And I did watch I don't think it was a documentary or something about like a women drive school because there was like, you know, that recent law that was passed that, or fairly recent law that was passed where women could drive. And I was just thinking that's insane. I mean, I feel like we are still so far behind, but yeah, I mean, you make the point of like, if you look into the rest of the world, especially, you know, in Africa or in just, you know,
In
India or
India,
different places,
yeah.
like there's still, or, you know, the like Middle East countries, there's still even further behind.
Yeah, and also, you know, interestingly enough, what I found, I've been reading, have you read Eve?
I haven't, no.
Okay, I'm listening to that on audio so I can work at the same time, but I do have the book as well. And it talks about the medical studies that haven't really been done for women. You would love it, Cara. And what I found really sort of fascinating is there's a part in it where it talks about the Indian culture and how when it comes to even a meal, having a meal, the young women are fed last. So men are fed
Mm.
first, mothers are fed. No. Men are fed first, and then the sons are fed, and then the daughters. And if you're a pregnant woman, you're fed last. And I'm like,
What?
seriously, is this what's happening? And it seems it is absolutely ridiculous because a pregnant woman needs as much nutrient as possible in her body. So we're listening to things like this that are happening. You know, all I can say is I am so blessed. I am so privileged to have this life that I do have. And even though I have my own stuff that comes into this world of mine, to hear and to read things like this that are happening still to many other women, it's just it's deeply shocking. So if I can do something with the skill sets that I have and the gift that I've been given, that I've worked hard to, you know, put myself forward, put these messages across, then I'm hoping that I can at least ignite a spark. at least empowers somebody else, at least say to the next generation, I'm here, I'm standing with you, I'm doing whatever I can with whatever I have, to stand up for you, to add something to the conversation, to not let this just sit.
And where did you say this is happening? Where women are being fed last, especially
You
pregnant
need
women?
to read the book. It's in in India.
In India.
So she says.
Wow.
So I mean, I think growing up, yeah, the men would eat first. But yeah, it depends on which culture it's in. It just shocked me, just even hearing that. You know?
Yeah. Actually, speaking of traditions, like what was it like growing up as a woman of color? Because I feel like we did have a conversation. We were talking about, like, you know, the stigma around periods
Oh, yes.
yeah, traditions around periods.
So I grew up in a very strict religious household. And we often call them time capsule generations, where I really shared that my parents are from East Africa, and it goes a generation back before we get back to Gujarat, India. So what happens is they carry their traditions and their culture to the next. But because what I discovered is, like, India and their culture is moving forward, but these little capsules are holding on to, beliefs that are maybe 30, 40, 50 years old. So I grew up with this belief that when you're on your period, that you should not go in the kitchen and cook, and was made to kind of, I think I was even told that it's dirty. You're dirty. You can't go into the temple and pray because you're dirty. So you're not made to feel very good about having a period.
Yeah.
And then sort of understanding a little bit more that, that they would not allow the women to go into these areas because they would want them to rest. So the message that I got was a little bit different. So there are some good things behind it, but then the way that it was given to me didn't feel very nice. I was made to feel that this was a really bad thing, not a good thing, that was happening in my body. Very confusing growing up. Shame around it, that you can't go and pray, that it's just strange. I don't practice any religion. I've just grown up with stuff.
Did you meet like rebels, or like, were you, I mean, if you wanted to admit, like, did you sometimes be like, okay, I'm on my period, I'm just gonna cook a little bit, or
You
I feel
have
like
to.
that's what
It's
I
just
would have done.
ridiculous. If there's no food in the kitchen, what are you going to do? Starve? No. Is it okay for me to put a slice of bread in the toaster? I don't. Is that cooking? I don't know. So as I grew up through my teenage years, none of it made sense, and none of it stuck. So it was just that time capsule sort of way of thinking. I don't know if things like probably are still impacting other women out there. In terms of being a rebel, I mean, I'm just blessed. I discovered Madonna at 12 years old, and I replaced all of those goddesses with her. She was my idol. And she taught me, rebellionism is part of being a young woman of that generation of the 80s and the 90s. It's okay to be a woman. It's okay to like sex. It's okay to celebrate your body. And she empowered. That was the biggest voice that came through. She was also someone where, studying art history, I wasn't taught about women artists. I certainly wasn't taught about women artists of color. So when I left art school, I didn't really think I had a chance in the art world. So I gave up. Many of us do. And it was through her that I learned about Frida Kahlo. It was through her that I learned about Tamara Binka. It was through her that I learned about Marilyn Minter. Wow, there are women artists out there. Wow, there are women artists of color. Wow, Frida Kahlo is closest to me in skin tone.
Yeah.
Of course I'm going to look to her. So, having a strong figurehead like her was a huge source of inspiration and empowering, and it's okay to get up and dance and everybody come and sing and it isn't a big deal, and all of that kind of information that I was, able to receive. So I count my blessings. There is a
Yeah.
goddess, it's Madonna. It's Madonna in my world.
Yes, no, my sister actually introduced me to Madonna early on, and I loved her music. I loved what it stood for. I loved her rebellion against, patriarchy, and yes, and having women know their power, and that it's
Takes
okay
a tremendous
to
amount of
have
courage.
pleasure,
Yeah, but I
sexual
think people
pleasure.
don't realize how much courage it would have taken for her to do that and to withstand that criticism.
Yeah.
And people laugh at me because my biggest dream is to meet her one day. And that supersedes the art that I make, as far as I'm concerned. I'm not interested in my legacy. I'm happy to die once I move on her. That's it for me. I just think we need these figureheads like Kamala Harris. I sometimes ask myself, where are they? We had the Maya Angelou and Rosa Parks, and I don't think any of them really asked to become figureheads, but they became figureheads.
Yeah.
We need more women in these positions to continuously lift each other.
Yeah. Yeah. And I
Support.
agree. I agree with that. And it makes me think about being a doctor. Like there's not very many Black women doctors that are out there, especially within California. And even in my medical school, I think that there was like 7% of the 160, 170 person class were Black people, or consider themselves Black people. So there's still ways to go, and I think that my patients, especially people of color, Black and brown and just people of color, I feel like really do appreciate seeing me when I walk into the room. And
100%, because you're going to
yeah,
have much more of an understanding of the experiences that can be often just dismissed. I admire you. I love the work that you do. I'm happy to support and champion what you're giving back to our communities. It's really important. We need, 100%. We need women like you out there
yes, yes.
doing the work that you do.
Well, thank you. And there was people, I mean, people before me. One person in particular, Dr. Daphne Kalmes, who was a mentor for me and got into medical school, I feel like through her, but definitely a Black woman pediatrician that I looked up to and was inspired by. So, yes, I feel like all of the people of color out there, continue doing the things that you're doing because it does inspire others
Hold that head up
to.
and keep going. Yeah, that's really the key right now, and I think a lot of us need to hear that. Hold your head up, be proud of who you are. Our skin is perfect. It's absolutely perfect, and I tell my children, you have golden skin, don't let anyone tell you otherwise. We are
Yes.
beautiful golden.
Yes, we tan very well, and
Well, not these
the
days.
sun loves us. Yeah.
Not these
Shima,
days.
how does your art speak to who you are? I mean, I feel like you've kind of answered it, but how does it speak to who you are?
That's a really interesting question, because I sometimes sit here. I think I had that conversation with you where, making feminist artwork um feels like heavy lifting sometimes. I can't. It's really difficult to stop myself from making this work. I feel that I respond to my environment. I absorb this information and it's regurgitated through the work. Um, your question.
How does your art speak to who you are?
I don't think there's a separation. I think really I am a colorful person. I am a strong voice. That filter isn't there. I unabashedly have to work through break down walls around things that I'm uncomfortable about, my own body, to be able to say, hey, it's okay for me to paint virgin landscapes, and it's women's autonomy literally, in your face, and that's okay. um I it's such a difficult thing, because I'm looking around my studio and I'm thinking, this is all something that's coming through me that I feel that I need to talk about. Starting with color, I am a woman of color, being told, no, those colors you shouldn't be using, that's whatever. Having to fight against that. Hey, no, you shouldn't be painting naked women. I actually had to hide my nude studies from my dad growing up. So when I went to art school, I was told to not let him see these. So feeling shame around that and having to overcome that as an adult, saying it's okay for me to paint a naked body. That's okay. It's okay for it to be a female naked body. Breasts are fine, vaginas are fine. There isn't really any shame around it. So overcoming these mental blocks, the people saying no, also taking on board some of the political conversations, and saying, you know what, I want to celebrate who we are. There, my women are often just every color that comes to me, that I intuitively, just seem to pick up and put these colors together. There is no shame in our histories. There's no shame in, the pigmentation in our skin. And just saying, really, to each and every one of us, embrace your colors, embrace your history, embrace whatever's brought you here today. Hold that head up, and celebrate it.
Yeah.
I don't know. Did I answer your question there? It's like,
No, you did. You did. Actually, I had a reading recently from a shaman who's absolutely powerful, and she actually brought up about my ancestors coming through and saying that I need to don't forget about my where I came from, my ancestors. And I'm like, you know what? I feel like sometimes I do not hide it, but I just don't bring it to the forefront. And as a Black woman, as a Creole woman, I from like family from the South, from New Orleans, I feel like, yeah, there's sometimes where I diminish that or I don't talk about it because it's I don't know. But actually, it was a reading recently, like about a month ago.
the thing is, you can't get away
Yeah,
from history, right? And
no.
I find that in the work, that as much as sometimes I want to do these gentle pivots away and say, hey, I'm kind of tired of doing the heavy lifting and doing this work for a minute, and I want to escape and do something else, but it just seeps through. There isn't really any way of, it's almost like, it goes down to that molecular level of, going into biology. It's like it's in the air, and it will just seep through. It finds a way out. And we can never, as women of color, as people of color, we can't escape from our skin, and we're
No.
reminded of it.
Yes. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
celebrate it.
Yeah, so celebrate it. Yeah,
Celebrate it.
celebrate it. The colors of the
You stand up
vulva,
because of your
the
skin color.
purples and the
Celebrate it.
yes,
Shine
yes,
your light.
yes,
Don't let anyone tell you otherwise.
yes. I completely agree with you. I completely agree. I wanted to dive into a bit of your artwork, your lovely artwork that you have around you. And I wanted to read an excerpt from actually a work entitled, I think this from a year ago or a couple years ago, Too
Yeah.
Controversial Women at Work. Yeah, back in 2023. So the excerpt goes, drawing inspiration from Courbet's Origin of the World, Shima Star series, Virgin Landscapes draws viewers in with vibrant and colorful abstractions of female anatomy. By merging the physical forms of women with the natural world, these artworks highlight the innate connection between women and nature and celebrate the diversity of their bodies. However, the landscapes eventually lead to the dystopian reality of women at work. The depicted women's vulnerable position and absence of hands and feet reflects a disturbing truth, a systemic deprivation of agency and control over women's bodies. In combination with the lettering Women at Work, the centerpiece is reminiscent of a product line. Within this distorted realm, women are reduced to man made objects, stripped of autonomy and confined to their reproductive functions. So I wanted to know what inspired you to do two controversial Women at Work. Was it the overturning of Roe versus Wade in the year before?
So there's two parts to that. So initially, the body of work, Women at Work, I conceived that around 4 or 5 years ago. So it's a small drawing that I just suddenly just needed to just get out of my system. The title of the exhibition, so that was my solo exhibition in Seattle last year. Too controversial, I titled it. The title is in response to me having a conversation with a gallerist, and she was an Indian gallerist. Fingers crossed that, I don't know, hopefully she'll come back into my world, maybe she won't. But she saw this body of work and she said, oh, no, this is too controversial. And that did not sit with me very well at all, because I thought, haven't we moved beyond this? Can I not have this conversation through the work and talk about women losing rights and autonomy over whether they should give birth or are forced to give birth? And so the Women at Work is actually about forced labor. So basically, it's another one of those things where I'm like, okay, you said that to me, I'm taking that and I'm fired up now. I'm going to use this to say, F you, I'm doing this. And I ended up having to do that show myself. It took 4 years for me to have the courage to put that work out there. It's not an easy game. So people think that these artists are doing this work and it's easy for them. I promise you, it's not easy. It takes a lot out of someone to put work out there that makes them vulnerable, that also makes them a target. That's the other side of it. So the conversation I wanted to have is with the Virgin Landscapes and then with Women at Work, which is
yes, please show us.
Yeah, which is this piece. And there was a series of these, so I have 3 of these, and it is on the Instagram. And these are reproduced in a way that it looks mechanical. One of the areas that I specialized in was screen printing, so it almost feels like these were screen prints mechanically produced. So you've got these beautiful landscapes which are behind me, leading you to these 3. They have no arms, they have no legs, and they're forced to give birth. Women at Work.
Yeah.
It's also go ahead.
Sorry. You said forced to labor, and I was thinking, is it birth? You're talking about labor like that, or are you talking about like prostitution? Because I think a part of me thought of like, prostitution, like women, sex trafficking, like that being a big thing of women being forced to do things that they don't.
Well, I do believe
to be a part of.
If we're going to talk about that for a second, I think it should be legalized. I think that way men and women, it's not just women, there would be protections for them. So that's the next step after we've gained whatever we need to then empower and protect. Often, some people that do choose to earn a living to feed their family by selling sex, and those who are forced to sell their bodies. I would like that, to see that legalized and those people protected, and more conversation around that. But it is
yeah.
really, really, it was a play on men at work and women at work. The contrast of those two, and what does that look like? I mean, you don't see a woman at work sign when you're going down the road. No. It's a man at work sign. But then, the contrast of what that would look like for a woman. Well, if we're looking at what's happening with Roe v. Wade, if we're looking at what's happening in the US with, people protesting outside abortion centers, what are you asking women to do? You're asking women, and really, when you look at the numbers, it's women of color that are more impacted. That's the reality here, and each of these pieces, so there were 3 of them, were in vibrant pink, vibrant green, vibrant yellow, as road signs would be. So this is we're not going to miss it. This is in your face again. I can't help it. There are some subjects that don't need to be messed around with. It doesn't have to be complicated, the imagery. It can be really simple, and the message is right there. You're not going to miss it.
Yeah, I remember running in Hawaii, and there being a men at work sign that was out, and I took a picture of it and I posted it, but I put WO in front of of the men at work to put women at work. But yeah, you never see women. You never see the women at work sign.
It doesn't exist. Does it exist?
It does, yeah.
It does. Actually, interesting enough, I actually wanted to get these printed onto road signs. And again, this is interesting for me. So every time I try to do something, I'm getting, no, it's too controversial. So I contacted a company, because that was initially, I wanted to get these printed, and I could still do that. But they refused. They said the image was too graphic. Now, how many women are giving birth? 200,000 babies are born a day. This is too controversial. Watching, having a baby coming out of vagina. This is natural. The animal world do this. It's like it's such confusing messaging. You're a woman, you can give birth, rah rah rah, and no, put that away. We don't want to see it.
Yeah.
I don't understand. Going to
sense.
Greece and to natural history museums and galleries and seeing, Michelangelo's with huge penises everywhere. That's okay. Right? That's okay. But I don't see any vaginas or babies popping out of vagina. I don't understand it.
As a sculpture.
As sculptures, yes.
Yeah. I don't understand. And I mean, I have always thought about that of, why aren't there more sculptures of women as much as there are of men?
Well, interestingly enough, if you want to have that conversation, it's because of money. So who had the money? Who was asking for that work to be made? And that's gone. So it all goes back down to money.
Yeah. Okay. I did have the question about who you were speaking to, or this is what I wrote down. Who were you speaking to for the work to controversial women at work? Was it mainly women? Was it men? Both? US society?
All of us, anyone that's willing to listen. Anyone that, isn't aware or recognizes that there's a struggle, the next generation. I can't produce any more kids. I'm going through that stage of life now. So, taking up this cause, I don't have to. But I do have a daughter, and I have nieces, and it's about them. If I can inspire, I can't change the world. We talked about this a little bit. You grow up, when you're young, you feel like, yeah, I can change the world, I can do anything. And then you realize in the later years, well, the only thing that I really have any power over is my vote. And that's really the biggest thing that anyone that, that we have in a democracy, that we have, that is ours, that can make a change. what I can do through my work is hopefully maybe get someone to think a little bit differently, maybe highlight, hey, hang on a minute, this impacts, forced labor impacts women of color. Are you aware of that? In much higher numbers. Are you aware that, Gustave Courbet painted The Origin of the World, and here you go, I'm painting it, but I'm painting it as a woman of color, and this is what it looks like, and I'm connecting it back to the roots of Mother Earth. Why are you calling it Mother Earth when you're raping it all the time?
Yeah.
So there's so much around the, what can I do to have a conversation or start a conversation? What can I do to add to the dialogue? Can I inspire somebody? I've had people look at my work and say, yeah, this does inspire me. Then I've done my job. You go do the work now. That, I think, one, I can't help doing it. Two, what can I do to make a difference? Three, realizing that I'm only human, and that I can't change very much, but what I can do is educate, inspire, and lead as much as possible.
Yeah. I mean, and your statement earlier about, you feel like when growing up, we feel like we could change the world, and being an adult, it doesn't feel like that way. I beg to differ. I feel like your
Oh,
work is definitely inspiring many people to think differently about their own bodies and have a little bit more empowerment for it. Like I feel like we are the conduit through which the world is populated. It is through the vagina and through the vulva where this planet has been populated. So like there's so much power in our wombs and in our bodies, and I don't think that we see that regularly. So to see your work of female anatomy in the artistic form, I feel like is a beautiful thing. And I feel like Viva La Vulva is here to do similar. It's like we have to understand, or I want women to understand that there's so much power in this body that we have.
and there is. I mean, the woman's body has been designed through evolution to do this job, right? This is not what we're made for, but it's an essential part to womanhood. To be able to birth the next generation. And obviously, not everybody comes out of a vagina. They might have maybe a C-section, maybe,
Yes, yeah.
surrogacy or whatever it is. There are different ways that this can happen now. And it's really, when it's really sort of whenever there's this suppression happening in our voices, and hey, you can't do that, you can't breastfeed in public, you can't do these certain things which are absolutely essential. Breastfeeding is essential, and one of the most important things and nutrients that you can give to a newborn child. And you shouldn't have to feel shame if your child is hungry and you need to feed them. All of these aspects of womanhood, the shame around it, the negative language around it needs to be shed, and we have to feel empowered. So if the work helps to empower the next woman, then yes, I'm doing my job. I am contributing. I'm doing something that is valuable, and that's really what I'm interested in. I'd love to just have a moment and say, hey, I just want to make a mess on my canvas, and it doesn't need to be anything. I'm not saying anything. I'd love to be in a mental space to allow myself to do that. Now, it's really hard for me because, again, like I said, the only place I could do it was academically, which was through school. So I don't see art as a frivolous thing. I've never had the opportunity to see it as a frivolous thing. People say to me, oh, don't you have fun? Hang on a minute. That doesn't come into my conversation. I'm not making fun work. This isn't fun to have these conversations. I'd much rather not have to have these conversations. Yeah, maybe I should be back to London. I don't know. I don't know. But this is just part of Shima being Shima. The other thing, Cara, is like my name. And we talked a little bit about this. Shima in different cultures, in the Hopi Native American culture, means mother. In Japan, it means island. In Persia, it means love, beauty. In Nigeria, it means heart. So I've had to also learn what my name means and realize, whoa, hang on a minute, you have a name that carries something that is significant, that actually doubles down on the work that you're making. I have a responsibility with it, and that's another thing that's just like beyond. Whoa, why was I given that name? You know?
Yeah. And wait, when did you find out like what the meaning of your name
It's
was?
really interesting because my family actually call me Seema. And really, it should have been spelled Sema. And my father spelled it as Shima, Shima, and my sister was given an English sounding names, right? First generation. We want our kids to be able to fit in and not feel isolated or persecuted for having a difficult pronouncing name. It's introspection. I think a lot of us artists, we dig deep, researching through history, seeing all of a sudden, I'm like, what does Shima mean? I grew up with Shima sort of at the end of Hiroshima, and it didn't feel good. We grew up with a generation of hiding under our desks because we were worried about a nuclear bomb. So no, I didn't feel good about my name.
Yeah.
And then learning that, oh, actually, this is what this means. Oh, this is what it's really introspection. I think a lot of us artists do that. We really dig deep into ourselves, and to find some source, some meaning to this life, to who we are and what we do and why we do it. And then learning that, hey, okay, I'm painting naked women, I'm talking about motherhood. It's really important to me. And then finding out, oh, well, my name means mother. That's crazy. That's just
So you're kind of doing the work before you fully discovered what your name meant.
I had that in Shima Island, the island one first, and then through talking to friends and then studying, I found the others. And even in Hebrew, it's a name or a word that's chanted before a blessing. So it just really is just, again, this eclectic pool of stuff that I seem to be carrying around, and I don't really understand why.
Yes. Well, you can see it through your name. Now I want to look up my name. I know in Spanish it means face and expensive.
Oh,
so, I haven't researched other languages, but now I'm inspired to.
Dude,
Yeah. What would you say to the women of the world? Because you say you have when we first started, you said that you have a different perspective because of your roots, where you grew up. What do you say, or what would you say to the women of the world, especially around empowering, feminism, empowering them, I guess?
Okay, so feminism isn't a crime, and it's okay to be a feminine feminist. It's okay to what do I want to say? Just don't listen to the negative rhetoric as much as possible. And I think it's really hard for it's the younger generation that we're molding. Those are the ones that as an older generation you need to be putting positive language forward and say, hey, it's okay for you to, wear a skirt if you want to go outside. I grew up with, girls, Indian girls at school going out with long dresses, and as soon as they got to school, they'd put on a short skirt, and before they got home, they would change. But I was one of those kids. I've always been rebellious. I was one of those girls that if I went out in a short skirt, I came home in a short skirt. I didn't care. I would take the shite from my parents. I would just do it. So that nature of I would love for us to be in a space where we truly do feel whatever skill sets we have to offer are valued. What our bodies do is valued. that we have power over our own bodies. That is important. I sometimes sit there and imagine those voices that are squash. They could be the next best scientist. Women, I worked for Marie Curie when I was younger. And there are powerful, amazing, smart, eloquent women out there that, if they were just given some opportunity, could maybe be the next people that do life-changing things. I think their voices should be valued equally, if not more so.
Yeah.
I kind of want to balance the ship. People don't like it. I'm like, no, that pendulum needs to swing all the way. I want all women to be empowered. Let's see what that looks like. But also remembering that, it's also important that you don't take down another woman, that because of patriarchy and because of the things that have been seeded in the past, the notion of of competitiveness between women is ugly. You're beautiful, I'm equally as beautiful, it's okay, none of us are perfect. So all of the tropes and the conditioning and just being able to rip all of that off, shed the skin like a caterpillar and turn into butterflies. So that I want women to feel empowered.
Yeah. And, I do feel that swing, that pendulum swing of like slowly but surely out of the patriarchy and more into the matriarchy, into the women empowerment space. I mean, we are already seeing it through a woman vice president. We are seeing it through her even running for presidency. Like that's insane. To just all of the positions that were usually held by men are now held by women. So I do feel that it is a shift, and I feel like there's some people with old ideas and traditions that are feeling the shift as well, but are holding strong to the way things are, the way things were. That is my
I
thought.
agree with you. I think, what, like you said, that you had your source of inspiration was the doctor that sort of supported you doing that. We need more women doing that for the next generation, and what give as much as possible to inspire and to lead and to show that this is possible for you. And these voices, just giving them space. I thank you for giving me some space to talk about my work and, whatever it is that I'm trying to give back. And I literally posted something the other day and saying, I sometimes wonder, who am I doing this for? When I'm making work like this, when I'm making work like Star People, who am I actually doing? Am I trying to make myself feel better here? There's a little bit of self-soothing that is needed. But also, can I offer you something that will make you smile today, make you feel like, okay, I can get up, I can go do this, and I can face that adversity. And it would be nice if we can get to that space where we don't have to be singled out because our pigmentation is different. I don't, I want to get, I don't want to have to be reminded of it. I want to celebrate, and I want others to be celebrated.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. So Shima, before we get out of here, I wanted to ask you a question. This is a little different than what I usually do, but if you could create a holiday dedicated to celebrating the vulva, what tradition or activities would you include? And I'm talking about vulva, vagina, female reproductive system. But what traditions or activities would you include?
What would be interesting? Well, the thing is, I'm Hindu born, so the linga is also the female reproductive system. So when we research back into history and we look at Hinduism, which is probably one of the oldest religions, it's always been celebrated. It's just not spoken about very loudly. So again, there's research that I've had to do to say, oh, our bodies are celebrated, through prayers, through worshiping. I would love for people to, be able to pull out a name of a woman that has done something wonderful and put that in a bucket, and they will learn about her. So I want more education around what women have done, what women have achieved. We're now seeing through art history, all of a sudden, oh, there's Artemisia Gentileschi. She's like, fifth, I don't know, one of the earliest women artists. I'm like, why didn't I know about her growing up? That would have been inspiring for me. Oh, she's a woman, she's painting, she had to struggle to do that. So that's what I want. And the only reason we are learning about these women that have achieved things throughout history is because women are finding out about them and pulling it forward and to the forefront and writing books. I've got a whole pile of books there on women artists. It's because women are doing the work. So keep going, women. Celebrate yourself. I don't know, light a candle for yourself every single day. tell yourself that you love your skin every single day. And celebrate the beauty of womanhood.
Yes.
I don't know, did I
love it.
I gave you something.
Yes, no, you did. So Shima, how can people stay in contact with you? How can people purchase your art and support you? Yes, let us know.
Well, I appreciate the support in any way, shape, or form. Instagram, the handle is Shima Star. My website is shimastar.com, and support can come in many ways. That one heart, that one light has sometimes been a lifeline for me. So, coming in and saying, hey, I'm enjoying this. That's everything. Making a comment is everything, because it feels like, okay, maybe I should make another one. Maybe I should do this. Maybe, the days when we're coming up to hibernation season, I want to be a bear and I want to disappear. Literally said, I just want to go curl up on my blanket and not have to do anything for a little bit. That is support. Purchasing the work is support. If you have, if there's a cause that you want me to donate something to, ask me. I'll be happy to support. So this is what support looks like. It's that heart, it's that comment, it's the, purchasing the work. It's asking to support another cause around women. Just do it. Just ask and do it. All of those things, mean that I then am empowered to help somebody else. It's pay it forward in some ways, right?
Yes. Well, I will put your information, your Instagram, your website into the description of today's episode. As well as I want you to send me some links, or how people can also look at the pictures of women at work, maybe of your other pieces, the star one. But yeah, I'll see if I can put some links in the description as well, so you can take a look at it if you are not joining us on YouTube. So thank you again, Shima, for being on this episode, and I am so grateful for you and the work that you do.
I'm grateful for you, Cara. Thank you again for this opportunity, and hopefully this conversation will inspire other artists, other creatives, and women who need to feel that, it's okay. It's okay to talk about your vulva. It's okay to have an orgasm. It's okay to celebrate your body. It's okay to do these things, and just celebrate, just enjoy your breath in the morning.
Yes, yeah. Which reminds me, because the clitoris, there's only one function of it, and I say this on many of my past episodes, but the only one function of the clitoris is pleasure. There's no other reason for it being there. So that is, yes.
Well, actually, if you read
pleasure.
Eve, she actually says health reasons. It actually keeps women healthier. The more orgasms they have,
more orgasms make you healthier. Yes, I also did an orgasm challenge years ago, but yeah, like a 30-day orgasm challenge. Yes, I do totally agree that
let's
the
leave
more
this
pleasure
on a
that you put
wonderful
in your
high.
body, the better. What'd you say?
And then let's leave this on a wonderful high. And again, thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you, everyone, for listening to today's episode. If you enjoyed today's episode, like, subscribe, comment about what you liked about it, and let your friends and family know about it, because the more we know, the more we go, right? All right. Well, thank you again for joining me on another episode of the Viva La Vulva podcast. Bye.